All right, let's get more on this, and we're now joined via Zoom by legal expert Casper Badenhorst. Thank you so very much for being with us, Casper, on SABC News. We certainly do appreciate you taking time to talk to us.
Good afternoon, Flo. Thank you for having me.
Just as a start, all right, so the Deputy Chief Justice, Raymond Zondo, has said, nope, I refuse to recuse myself. Let's talk about the legal options that are now open to the former president. There was talk about reporting this to the Law Society, perhaps taking this on review, as you would have heard from the legal representative of the former president. Looking at the latest developments, what could unfold given what's available to the legal team of the former president at this time?
Yes, well, the two options that they've evidently said that they are going to approach is one is a report to the Judicial Services Committee, as well, and reporting Judge Zondo to them on the basis that they believe that he is biased, that he has some sort of axe to grind against Mr. Zuma, and that he hasn't recused himself because he, as Mr. Zuma alleges, is a friend of his. So that is the one option they have, and really what that entails is that the Judicial Services Commission will then constitute a committee. They will question the judge on these allegations that are made, and they'll make a determination on that. Yeah. The alternative to that, in which they've indicated, I think, even before that the judgment was given on the recusal application, was that they were going to take the matter on review. And that is if they were unsuccessful, which we now know they were. What that'll entail is an application to court to set out the facts why they believe that Judge Zondo has erred in his decision not to recuse himself. And they'll obviously have to attempt to convince a judge differently on these facts.
Let me ask you this then, sir. In your view, is there any merit to the former president's assertion that he won't get a fair hearing based on the past relationship that he has with the Deputy Chief Justice? There's been no denial really from Zondo of this past relationship. The only denial is that they aren't friends, which Zondo said, no, look, we're not friends, but there is a past relationship. That doesn't necessarily have to be the reason for recusal. There can be other issues, not just based on friendship. So I'm going to ask you, was that the correct decision of the Deputy Chief Justice to say he is indeed not recusing himself? Could there be a holes poked into whether or not this relationship would cause the former president to get an unfair hearing?
Well, in the end of the day, one has to apply the test that's there for that decision.
Yeah.
And that test is whether a reasonable, objective, informed person would, on the facts that are presented, have a reasonable apprehension that the judge is not going to be impartial. And Judge Zondo has evidently taken the facts that have been presented to him and has decided, well, he doesn't believe that there is any reasonable apprehension that he will not be impartial. Whether, from seeing what has been presented and from commentary as well, most people indicate that the grounds which were presented by Zuma was not quite concrete. They were very flimsical, and there wasn't much to go on that regard. So, one can test the merits. Mr. Zuma's well within his rights to do so, but whether the facts presented were strong, Judge Zondo doesn't believe so.
Yeah, we've repeatedly heard from Deputy Chief Justice Zondo that this is not a trial. So let me ask you then, what's the worst that can happen if one opts to say boycott the commission? There's been so much talk today about the fact that the former President Zuma and his legal team kind of walked out. Some saying, well, it's just a commission. Very prominent people, in fact, opted to boycott the TRC, just as a flimsy example there. But there were very prominent figures who refused to actually partake in that particular commission. So I'm going to ask you then, What then? What's next? What happens? What are the repercussions?
Well, as Judge Zondo said, there are consequences to this. I mean, it's not something you can stand up and walk out of. You know, in our profession, there's rules and there's a decorum that one must follow when participating in these sorts of forums. And in particular, with this forum, I mean, it's constituted in terms of legislation, the Commission Act, and very clearly that act states that if a witness fails to participate or does anything to obstruct the commission, there are implications which include a fine or imprisonment. So saying that it's just the commission is unfortunately an incorrect view, and as there are consequences. I mean, to not comply with directives given by a judge or a commissioner who's been appointed as a presiding officer over a commission have grave implications if you do not comply with it. Our legal system will be a laughingstock if those rules and procedures are not followed to the T.
But that precedent was already set, wasn't it? And that's why I gave you the example of the TRC. That precedent was already kind of set then, wasn't it? So are the rules, are you saying that the rules are a little bit more stringent now? What are you saying?
Well, I mean, the rules are the rules. They state there that there's the implications. I mean, I believe it's Section 6 of the Commission Act. And that, the rules regulating the State Capture Commission are constituted in terms of that act. So the implication is that if you as a witness, if you've been summoned to court and you haven't been excused by a judicial officer, then you face the consequence of what that legislation permits in terms of a penalty for contravening that law. It is like any other system or court hearing. If you leave a court or your trial and you evade it without receiving the permission from the presiding officer to actually leave, you stand the chance of being held in contempt of court. And a contempt of court does hold the implication of either fine or imprisonment. It also has the implication of a warrant of arrest being issued for your presence at a trial. So the point being is that, whether it's been done in the past that people have not complied with the rules in terms of a commission, there is still precedent that is within the legislation that should be followed.
All right, I think we'll take another time to take a look at that particular legislation. Thank you so very much. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Legal expert Casper Badenhorst, thanks for giving us your time here.
Thank you very much.
Most welcome.